yeah, we were doing CMT like that, really, really close.
Really? Yeah.
I'm ready, Eddie.
We are halfway to loading through to YouTube. Perfect, and we're live. So when you're ready, Chairman.
Still no Colin. Okay, ready? Right. Good evening. Welcome to the executive from me. We'll start with apologies.
Thank you, Chairman. There are no apologies at the present time.
Okay. Okay. Item 2, minutes of the last meeting. Are you happy that they are record of the last meeting? Are you happy for me to sign them? Okay. This is going to be tricky because
yeah, agreed. Yeah.
I will just ask Graham, thank you for voting. Okay, but it's only the executive who can vote tonight.
No, it was. I was trying to attract your attention before to present apologies on behalf of Councillor Morgan Rice.
Councillor Morgan Rice sends his apologies. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, you missed my hand up.
Thank you. Sorry. Okay, we'll note that. Okay. So is this for sign? Okay. So I got the okay to sign the minutes. Okay. All right. Declarations of interests, item 3. Any declarations of interest? I'm not seeing any. Okay. Okay, item 4. Do we have any questions by members? Councillor Tapper.
Thank you, Chair. A question for Councillor Adrian Page. Residents have been expressing concern regarding the contradictory, arbitrary, inconsistent and seemingly expedient decisions handed down in response to TPO permission requests and on decisions on woodland clearances authorised in order to put planning applications can be approved. It's been suggested by residents that the decision reached very much depends upon who is making the decision. To some arboriculturalists, every tree seems to be sacrosanct. Others take a more reasonable view regarding the balance of effective management and the impact of trees on the lives of our residents. Would the portfolio holder consider an independent investigation into the processes and recent decisions made by the Arboricultural Department of Surrey Borough Council to ensure that all practitioners observe common standards and arrive at consistent decisions in future?
Thanks, Graham. So as I understand it, we have a tree officer working for us who gets involved in applications that come to the council. Is there any particular one that springs to mind that would need investigation, or are you asking perhaps that we review the policy and advertise it again on the website where it is, so that people can make the right applications? Or is it perhaps you think woodlands being cleared without applications going in?
No, it's a little bit different from those situations, though they do give me some concern, and not just myself. Lots of residents in respect of a number of different incidents of planning applications have made observations about the way that certain woodland areas are declared shall we say substandard, and therefore couldn't be chopped down. But it wasn't that was the situation You're right, we have one single tree officer at the present moment, but he has been off work for a considerable length of time due to health reasons.
Doesn't matter what he's been off with, Councillor Tapper.
And it appears that decisions have been taken by substitutes, people who have stepped up to carry out decisions on TPO applications which have been presented in the meantime. Well, clearly that's not something that could have been called to a halt simply because the main tree officer was not present at work, and they have arrived at decisions, it seems, which contradict those decisions that have been arrived at in very similar situations elsewhere, giving much harsher decisions, even refusals, where agreements have been arrived at a reasonable approach to the TPO request. So I think it's wider than that. It's everybody who's involved or could be involved in TPO decisions, and they all need to be working off the same hymn sheet.
I think Councillor Tapper, I can see Councillor Page is ready to come in there, but if I may, what I would say, first of all, TPOs in that department is not actually an executive function, so it's not within our gift to actually do what you're requesting. However, what I think would be useful is that perhaps we can take this offline, and Councillor Page, I think, would probably be very happy to meet with you virtually with, I believe it's Mrs. Rickard, her sectional regulatory. And I think a three-way discussion between you, first of all, to understand what it is you are seeing out in the borough, and how Mrs. Rickard and Councillor Page could explain it. And then we take it from there as to making sure, I completely agree, decisions have to be consistent, the rules have to be applied consistently. Okay, is that okay, Councillor Tapper?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Page?
Yeah, thanks. I was going to follow up, but yeah, there is a myriad of different rules that we have to follow within Surrey Heath, being a very wooded part of the world. I believe 70 to 80% of Surrey Heath is wooded, and there are special conservation areas which are different to other areas. So each piece of land is taken on its merit, and I'm sure that the officers look at that before decisions are made. But let's take this offline, and we'll thrash this out and perhaps look at the policy. Good.
Okay. Any other questions, Councillor Bates?
Thank you. I do have a question, but can I just ask that our group is also involved in that discussion? Because ironically, the same question, a very similar question, was something I'd already indicated to the Chief Executive that I wanted to discuss with him privately early this week, because two members of my group have very similar concerns to that, Councillor Tapper.
Yeah, we have, sorry, Councillor Bates, I think we've got 4 of the 5 group leaders here.
Yeah, okay.
This meeting, so can I ask the group leaders to let Councillor Page know who they would like? Let's just say one from each group, I think.
Happy to do that. So my actual question...
Page will set up the meeting.
Thank you. My actual question relates to the fact that over the last weekend, a decision was made, I think in good faith, to close a number of council car parks in relation to parking areas or parks. Obviously, we've had a very sunny, hot weekend because of concerns relating to incursions. My question is therefore, can we as a council at long last begin to move forward this issue of traveller sites and specifically transit sites, so that actually the vast majority of the members of the public in our community do not have to have their amenity withdrawn over one of the rare weekends recently when they had to go out and take exercise?
Right, thank you, Councillor Bates. I know that Councillor Jennings-Evans would be very happy to jump in there and talk about the security review that's going on with sites. But if I may, if it's okay, Councillor, I know that we're going to be discussing working groups. One of them is the equalities, and I want to talk about the terms of reference to include the traveller sites that you're talking of. So if it's okay, we'll put that on hold, and then let's just make sure that we cover it in the working group's terms of reference. Any other questions for leader or portfolio holders? Councillor Galliford.
Fairly general, but meeting with the acting CEO, we were reassured that the council is going to place climate change policies, make them intrinsic in every decision that's made. I'm just wondering what the executive's view of that is, or what vision you may have in regard to that, and how that might be enabled.
I think we had, if our memory serves, we had dueling motions at the council meeting, where the Conservative group and yourselves had proposals on how we tackle climate change. When we finally settled on one version or a combination of the two, it was unanimous, wasn't it? I don't think anyone voted against it. I think it's obvious that the council has to have a climate change policy. I think it's beyond discussion, although I happen to know that there's one councillor in particular who feels very strongly the other way. And that's good, because it gives the other side of the argument, I guess. But the majority of the evidence says that we're in a climate crisis. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm looking forward to the results coming from the climate change working group, with recommendations, firm recommendations, that then we can implement and take our borough forward. And I think we've got a target of the borough being climate change carbon neutral by, well, the council being 2030 and the borough by 2050. Now, I personally would say that if this can be brought forward, then so much the better. I see you're looking just a little like I think that's what we had agreed. I do stand to be
possibly the other way round, but yeah.
Was it? Okay, I thought it was
the borough 2030, yeah.
The council by 2030 and the borough by 2050. But no, my support and the executive are fully behind the climate change working group in order to see that we get firm. I don't want that, and I know no one wants that just to be a talking shop. Yeah. What we want to see is it be an actual report on firm actions that we can take, and then I think you'll get, again, full support of the council.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, any other questions for the leader or portfolio holders? No? Okay, thank you. All right. Item 5, conversion of Watchet's tennis courts to netball courts. Councillor Jennings-Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, so tonight the executive are being asked to resolve that the tennis courts at Watchet's Recreation be resurfaced and redeveloped as per the paper in front of us, which I hope you've all had the opportunity to read. These council operated tennis courts have not been resurfaced in over 20 years and have fallen into disrepair. There is currently no capital fund for this, and the anticipated cost for the project is £135,000. That is comprised of £103,000 for the tennis courts and £32,000 for floodlights, which would be subject to planning approval. In 2018-2019, the Watchet courts generated just £75 in income, whereas the recently redeveloped courts at London Road Rec generated £1,300 in play and pay, and £2,600 in annual membership, totalling just over £4,000 in the same period, showing that the redevelopment is worthwhile. As part of the redevelopment, we are looking to make these courts mixed-use courts, with 3 of the tennis courts being converted to 2 netball courts. If this is done, then it is likely that there is potential to generate £16,000 in income, which we would hope to do from year 3 onwards. £4,000 from tennis and £12,000 from netball, based on figures from the London Road Rec and neighbouring boroughs with similar sites. There is certainly a business case here, but it will be one that takes a long-term view to recoup the costs, some 22 to 23 years. The council will also seek grant funding to minimise the cost, and has the opportunity to take an interest-free loan for the floodlights from the LTA should planning for them be granted. There is a balance that needs to be sought between the costs and business case and the very much needed facilities. Surrey Heath currently is under providing when netball is concerned and has no dedicated netball courts outside of school situations. And netball has seen a huge rise in participation in recent years, since the England Roses' success at the Commonwealth Games in 2018. Now, in excess of 319,000 adults play netball fortnightly. Additionally, there is a growing call for local authorities to make physical activity easier and more accessible. Although compared to the national figures, Surrey Heath has good levels of participation, our numbers compared to our Surrey neighbours are not so good. This project would help to achieve an outcome for Surrey Heath of a healthier, more active population. Importantly, if we do nothing, then the council will be at an increased risk of insurance claims due to the current state of the courts and potentially the future loss of a much needed facility. Therefore, I hope the executive will resolve to agree with the officer's report and proceed as requested. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Jennings-Evans. Hello, Councillor Wheeler. Are there any questions for Councillor Jennings-Evans on the tennis courts Watch It Court? Perfect timing. Councillor Wheeler.
So I've been here all along. I just didn't think you'd want to see a photograph of me
Right, okay.
in current attire. So I suppose my question is, why can't all of the courts be multi-purpose? So there are leisure facilities for netball up at Lightwater, and I guess I should declare an interest in that I do still attempt to play netball when fit enough and foot not hurting. So one of the things that we are incredibly short of is somewhere where we can play league matches. So at the moment within Surrey Heath, we don't have anywhere that we can play league matches, and we play across in Bracknell and also in Ascot or Sunningdale at Charters. So we're very short of enough courts whereby league matches can be played. So I just was trying to understand the reasoning behind why all courts couldn't be marked for multi-sports.
Yeah, I'm happy to come back on that. As Councillor Wheeler knows, I'm a netballing parent and officiator myself, so I'm fully aware of the lack of facilities in the borough. I would assume, and Ben can come in here at any point, the situation would be that it enables both sports to be played at the same time, therefore giving a more diverse facility to our community. I completely agree that we need a lot more netball courts in the borough, and I would hope that we as a council would consider, when we redevelop other sites, looking to make those also multi-use.
Good, thank you. Any other questions?
Ben wants to come in.
Okay, Councillor Sword.
I didn't realise I'd been elected, but I'll take it. That's fine.
So I'm used to putting councillor. So yes, Ben.
No, it was just to clarify Councillor Wheeler's question very quickly. So what we found from sort of other sites is that there is an element of the tennis purists who get a little bit upset about overmarking. So the idea is that obviously where you would need tennis and netball court markings on those courts, some tennis players struggle with the differentiation. So the idea was to keep at least 2 of the courts just for tennis. So those who are sort of the more tennis purists can still use those 2 courts if they really feel they need to. But then the other 3 tennis courts could be used as 2 netball courts. So it does provide that mixed use that Victoria is talking about.
Thank you. Okay, I saw another, yes, Councillor Bates. Yes.
Thank you. I can actually remember playing on those tennis courts about 35 years ago. So I think it was probably more than 20, as has been alluded, since they were last done. And actually having tennis coaching, as it happens at the time. That's probably the last time I played tennis, to be honest with you. But in terms of the actual question, it's around the floodlights, because it seems to me that this would work or otherwise economically if the floodlights are successful. And obviously, at this stage, we don't know whether a planning application will be successful or not. So I suppose, I don't know if, well, obviously Councillor Lewis, I assume, is on the call, but whether or not he has any view as to whether or not local residents in the vicinity of Watchett are likely to raise any issue about floodlighting. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see about the validity of any such complaints, if there were to be any, and also the cost of them. Because if that was not to go through for whatever reason, then it does strike me that the economic side of this would be somewhat more questionable.
Before Councillor Jennings jumps in, Ben, you had your hand up there.
Sorry, it's just in response to Councillor Bates's point. there are already floodlights on the adjacent courts. So that where the courts are at Watchett, as you're probably aware, you have got Frimley Lawn Tennis Club literally adjacent on the courts next door, and 2 of their courts do have floodlights already. So there is a precedent set in that regard, and I know that's not a given reason why you would get planning permission, but I guess that kind of sets a bit of a theme. So I just thought I'd just mention that. Sorry.
Thank you. Okay, are there any other questions on this item? Okay, so members of the executive, we're asked to resolve that the tennis courts at Watchett's Recreation Ground be redeveloped to include the resurfacing of all 5 courts, repainting, new perimeter fencing, installation of a new gate access and online booking system, and the introduction of floodlights subject to planning. As part of the redevelopment, 3 courts be converted to mixed-use facilities, allowing for the provision of 2 netball courts. A tender process to source and appoint a suitable contractor be undertaken, and the project delivery be delegated to the executive head of business in consultation with the Places and Strategy portfolio holder. And in addition, we're advised to recommend that the capital programme be increased by £135,000 to fund the redevelopment of the Watchett's tennis court. Are we in agreement? I'll take a show of hands from the 6 executive members. Yep. Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, thank you. All right, item 6, appointment of executive working groups. Okay. Now there are 5 executive working groups. Camberley Town Centre, Climate Change, Equality, Local Plan and Surrey Heath Villages, the membership of which has been circulated. Just from our earlier point, the terms of reference for each working group are stated here, and in order to give latitude to the working groups to determine exactly the route they want to go to make sure they fulfil the requirements of the working group, there's some room for manoeuvre. But I would like to add in to the equality working group exactly what Councillor Bates was talking about earlier, that I believe that the traveller sites, permanent, we are required by law, we have a duty to provide a certain number of pitches for travellers and gypsies. We already do provide a certain number, but we are short of the number that we have to supply over the next, I believe it's 5 years. And obviously siting those pitches is a matter that has to be looked into very carefully. We are required, along with every other borough, to provide those pitches the right number. I believe I'm right in saying that transit sites are actually a matter for the county council, and wherever they would wish to position or locate those transit sites, it's for the county council to discuss that with whichever borough it feels is the right place to locate them. I would suggest that we put into the terms of reference for the equality working group that they take on the task of looking at the permanent sites in conjunction, obviously, with the regulatory officers, and we talk to Surrey County Council through the working group as to what the transit site thinking is of the county, so that the working group can report back to the executive. Okay. Councillor Bates?
Thank you. I mean, I agree that we obviously need to look at the issues of traveller communities for reasons that we've discussed at some length. However, it was my understanding that the local plan working group actually looks at permanent sites and also the specific issue that you raised regarding shortage of pitches. So I don't obviously want the equality group to kind of repeat something which another working group is doing. And I think it might just be worth, I mean, this could be perhaps taken offline, because I think the general principle is one that I think we will agree with, but just making sure that one working group that is already looking at planning related issues carries on doing that work, and one which looks at, I think, more corporate matters around the council and how we as a council deal with traveller communities, which I think is the point we're trying to make in regard to this one, can perhaps be in this one. So I would probably gently suggest that the specific wording can be kind of dealt with outside, but that particular point is just re-looked at first.
Yeah, thank you. I think it is right. The local plan working group is looking at our requirement for pitches, along with obviously everything else in terms of housing, etc. But I think that it's the matter of travellers is better dealt with in terms of equalities, because they are a minority group, and I think we should be taking care of that kind of discussion in that. But I do take your point that one of the things we want to avoid is duplication in the two working groups, and I'd be happy to take that discussion offline for the exact wording so that the two work in concert rather than any duplication. Okay, are we happy with that, Executive? Yeah, good. Okay, all right. Is that Councillor Mansfield? Did you have a point there, or were you just agreeing?
No, Mr. Chairman, I was just agreeing.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're happy to take that offline. Okay. Other than that, then the wording and the appointment of the executive working groups, we're asked to resolve small 1 through to small 4. So establish the executive working groups for the year, determine the number of seats and the allocation of those seats, appoint members and substitute members to those working groups, and adopt the terms of reference for each working group. Are we happy to proceed along that? Okay, yes, we are. Thank you. Okay, item 7, appointment of members to outside bodies for 2020-21. Okay. The outside bodies, we've had the list of nominees and members from last year, which you should have in your possession now. Is it the color-coded one? No, okay. So we have a number here which we may be able to take care of actually at the meeting, and some may have to go offline, particularly with the other group leaders. So the Basingstoke Canal Joint Management Committee, we have 2 nominations for representatives on that. Councillor Helen Whitcroft and Councillor Sarah Jane Croke. We only have the 1 vacancy, and Councillor Croke is happy to stand down the nomination and allow Councillor Whitcroft to take that position. Okay. The other, what are the other ones? Thames Basin Heaths Joint Strategic Partnership Board. Must be a long meeting just while they name the actual committee. We have Councillor Edward Hawkins and Councillor Victoria Wheeler are both nominated for that. Again, I've spoken to Councillor Edward Hawkins. This is a very technical, very planning-based position on that committee. And Councillor Victoria Wheeler, as you know, has been appointed Deputy Chair of Planning recently. And Councillor Hawkins is happy to stand down his nomination and allow Councillor Wheeler to step into that position. Okay. The third one with more than 1 nomination is Miss Gomes Trust, 4-year appointments. There are 3 appointees who have reached the end of their 4th year. 2 of those appointees were councillors previously, and that's how they became appointees to the Miss Gomes Trust. That is Joanne Potter and Chris Pitt. We have Councillor Emma Jane McGrath and Councillor Graham Tapper, who are nominated for those positions, and I suggest that Councillor McGrath and Councillor Tapper replace Joanne Potter and Chris Pitt as trustees on the Miss Gomes Trust. There's a third one where there's a Reverend Chris Russell, who has, our understanding is he's been on the committee for many, many, many years. And although we do have another councillor, Councillor Perry, who is happy to be nominated to go on to that trust, my feeling is that since Reverend Chris Russell would be very happy to stay on the committee, I think we allow him to do that. So that's my recommendation, that Councillor McGrath, Councillor Tapper replace Chris Pitt and Joan Potter, but Reverend Chris Russell is allowed to have another 4 years. Okay. Any questions on that? No. Okay. Executive, are we happy with that? Okay. Thank you. All right. There are vacancies on some, and it's our policy not to appoint trustees or councillors to any charity or any organisation where we don't have someone who has put themselves forward. But I just wanted to check. We have a vacancy on the Blackwater Valley Advisory Committee for Public Transport. And again, I would ask if group leaders would like to go into their groups and ask if anyone would like to be nominated for that position on there. We have the Briars Centre Management Committee. We are looking for one up. Councillor Galliford?
Just to say, if it's okay, I'm very happy to continue with that.
Okay. I don't see any executive shaking their head, so I think that would be good. Okay. You were on last year as well, Councillor Galliford, I believe.
Well, that's why I'm saying if it's okay to continue. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. There's a vacancy on the Heatherside Community Centre Council. We have Councillor Graham Tapper, but no other. Okay, again, group leaders, if you would. Councillor Tapper.
Yes, Councillor John Skipper was the lead on that last year, and has done a considerable amount of work with regard to the trustees on current projects. So I suspect he will want to continue on that. I will discuss this with my leader and with Councillor Skipper, but I suspect he probably will continue in that role.
I appreciate your comment. It is not my normal way of appointing people who aren't actually in the meeting, because that's how you end up on committees, by not attending the meeting where they're appointed. But I do take your point about Councillor Skipper. That would be very good. Thank you. Okay, Heathrow Community Noise Forum. We have a vacancy there to go alongside Councillor Wheeler. Again, people would talk about that. Relate North East Hants and Borders. That was Councillor Whitcroft last year. We have a vacancy there. Okay. Surrey Heath Local Area Committee. Is that a sub or an actual? It's a main role and a sub for Surrey Heath Local Area Committee. All right. Surrey Heath Sports Council. All right. We have two. We require a third. And finally, the Voluntary Support North Surrey, where we have one vacancy and a sub. Okay. As I say, this list has been issued, but I think it's an opportunity for councillors to get involved in areas outside the committee. And I think it's very worthwhile if we can do that. One of the things I would just like to have the committee agree is that on page 29, 2.3, councillors who are appointed to represent the council on an outside body for the year will be requested to keep the relevant portfolio holder apprised of the activities of that organisation. That has been done up until now fairly informally, and it is my intention at the end of this municipal year that will be done in a much more formal manner, where anyone who's been on the outside body will be requested to make a formal report. Now, that could be in writing or it could be in person, but we'll look to follow up each outside body, because we don't want to be wasting anyone's time. We don't want to be wasting a councillor's time. We don't want to be wasting the organisation's time. And what we need to know that it's worthwhile councillors giving up their time for that, and that we're making some kind of contribution to the organisation. Okay. Okay, so we're asked to resolve small 1, small 2, make the appointments to the outside bodies as listed in Appendix A, and that attendance be appointed by the appointed members listed in Appendix A be regarded as approved duties in accordance with the members' allowances scheme. Executive, are we happy with that? Okay, that's unanimous. Okay. Right. Item 8, appointments to Surrey Leaders Group outside bodies. Now, if I'm reading this correctly, there are no nominees to those outside bodies.
Thank you, Chair. There's none received today, so unless anyone wants to put themselves forward now.
Okay, so there are 2 Surrey County Council Adults and Health Select Committee. I have to say that I immediately thought of Councillor Darrell Ratteram, who is a doctor at Frimley Park Hospital, but then he informed me he's already on the committee, and it's someone else whose term has ended, and we're looking to replace that person. So again, group leaders, if I may ask you to go into that. The other one is the Countryside Access Forum, where again, it's about maintaining access to the countryside, working with Surrey County Council to do that. Okay. Right. So I'm guessing there's no resolution on that one since. Okay. All right. So we'll go on to item 9, establishment of the Property Investment Working Group. Okay, this is slightly different because this is an executive working group. There are several important changes from what was previously the Land and Property Board. In summary, number 1, all property matters will be decided by the executive, whereas previously a number of property matters were decided by the Land and Property Board. So we've now, with this paper, we're looking to implement the Property Investment Working Group, but all property decisions, so whether it's disposal, refurbishment, purchase for regeneration or purchase for investment, all of those decisions will come back to the executive and will be discussed obviously by that group. Number 2, the property investment strategy will be considered by the executive. Again, previously the Land and Property Board were the custodians of that. Number 3, the delegation of authority to the chief exec, which I think we put through in 2016, where the chief exec had the authority in conjunction with the leader, was able to make decisions on buying property. That is now rescinded. So the current acting chief exec and the leader will no longer have the authority to be spending money on buying property without it coming back to the executive. 4, membership now includes the leader of the largest others group, plus 1 member who has relevant experience in property, along with the leader and the portfolio holder for economic development, which is the deputy leader, Councillor Dugan. So there's some cross-party working there. And finally, scrutiny. It's a case of I, as chair of this new working group, will attend the Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee, where I will be reporting on the activity of this working group and will then answer whatever questions the Scrutiny Committee deems fit. So I think there are significant changes to how we intend doing our property investment going forward from how it was before. Councillor Malvaginam, followed by Councillor Bates.
Thank you, Chair. If you look at the composition of the group, which I think we do need to have I applaud your idea of actually creating the property investment working group. That's a good idea, which I totally endorse. It's actually the composition of the group which I have concerns on, because if you take the way it's been done as this paper suggests, it includes leader of the largest opposition group, which is myself, for those who haven't noticed it yet. That's a joke, guys. At least smile. The other part is I'm also the chair of the scrutiny committee. There's a conflict of interest all over the place for me as an individual, and also whether a largest opposition group is the right word we should put there. We need possibly have a councillor in there, but do we have to make it the largest opposition group is my point. Because I would have thought anyone who sits in this particular group has to have relevant property experience to actually carry out the function. And hence, I would actually opt out of, as a leader of the opposition group, I would like to opt out of this, because we had a group meeting amongst the Lib Dems 3-4 days ago, and this came up, and this is our conclusion, and I actually led it. So I wouldn't like to sit on this particular board.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bates.
Well, obviously, I think I'm the largest opposition group leader, but obviously I appreciate that Councillor Marvagan has a slightly different view. But actually, the point he makes is a good one. I think the issue that you have done here is very good. I think it's a long overdue constitutional change. It is right these decisions are made by politicians rather than officers for a variety of reasons, and also that they're done openly, they're scrutinised afterwards, and I applaud all that you've said in regard to that. However, I do think, and I did actually privately contact the leader of the Liberal Democrat group in regard to this, because it unfortunately, whilst this is absolutely laudable in terms of asking the leader of the largest opposition group, whichever, in terms of Councillor Marvagan, and indeed he does have significant financial experience, which he was too modest to mention there, and quite rightly the council would want to look at that and use that. The fact that he's the chairman of the Performance Scrutiny Committee would actually, in my view, be a conflict of interest, which is a bit of a pity, because obviously I appreciate you'd want to use him in regard to the particular working group, and therefore it would really be a view for him as to which of the two roles, in my view, he would wish to serve, and that's not a matter for me. In terms of one person who I think you are missing, although I accept it's your decision, is the portfolio holder for finance. I would have thought they may need to play an active role in this particular group, although I do see why you want that to be a non-executive member of the council, but I would perhaps gently offer that as an alternative option. I think it's good that you want to involve opposition members. It's not an area I particularly have any expertise in, to be fair. I know that there are members who do, but I don't think it would be appropriate for the chairman, whoever the chairman is of the Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee, to actually undertake that role, and therefore I have sympathy with what Councillor Marvagan is actually saying there.
Okay, thank you. If I may just, Councillor Marvagan, I obviously there is that tension between the position of chair of the Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee and being on this. My belief is, but it's not for me to say, and Councillor Marvagan, if you are standing down from that, that is completely your decision, and I respect that. But it was, as you say, Councillor Bates, it was my firm hope that we can open this out. As I said weeks and weeks ago when I started this role as a leader, that I wanted to use the expertise from across the chamber. And you have, as you know, Councillor Marvagan, a large amount of property and financing experience. I don't see the conflict of interest between the two positions, because this is a working group that analyses whether things are put forward to the executive or not. And that's why I was happy for you to be on the committee. As I say, it's not my decision, it's yours if that's not what committee or working group you want to be on. What I would say is that I do think it should be someone, I take your point, Councillor Bates, about Councillor Lewis being on as finance, and that working group could be larger, but I particularly wanted it to be a small, agile working group, because as opportunities come up, we're in the real world out there in terms of when items are marketed, properties are marketed. We want it to move quickly, and the smaller number is more agile. But I would like to see it be someone who is not from the Conservative group, so that there was input from not just people who perhaps think alike, although I can vouch for the fact that we don't all think alike in the Conservatives. Okay. Let me just ask a question for a second. So within the paper we have, can we appoint someone else? Can we go to the other ones and do it that way? So we can just, right. Sure. Yeah. Will probably continue for far longer than just these 12 months. And Councillor Malvaginam may or may not be chair of the Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee, etc. in time. But what I would do is change that line then in the working group from the leader of the largest opposition group to a member of the opposition. Okay, and then if we can ask the group leaders of the non-Conservative group leaders to sift through their teams, and I would like you, if you would, to make recommendations on the basis that there is relevant experience there. It isn't just about someone keeping an eye on what's going on. I'm not looking for a policeman. I'm looking for someone who will contribute to the discussion. Okay, Councillor Malvaginam.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to suggest that we actually, whoever takes this post instead of me, has to have some experience in property or business or something in real life. I'm not saying others don't have any. My sincere apologies if I offended anyone. I did not mean to. But it's with real experience, because this is buying and selling of properties and investing for the long term for the borough. So we should have people with relevant experience. I'm quite, I will definitely ask my group. My group did discuss this, like I said, 3 or 4 days ago when we met. So I will put it back to them now to see whether they would be willing. I would also speak to Councillor Bates to see whether their community group has any relevant people. Let's see whether we can come up with someone for you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So, Executive, we are asked to resolve that a property investment working group be established. Terms of reference for the property investment working group are as set out in Appendix A, be adopted. Members be appointed to the property investment working group in accordance with paragraph 2 of this report, but amended to be a member of the opposition rather than the leader of the largest opposition group. And 4, the delegations to the Chief Executive in consultation with Land and Property Board to agree any authorisations in the property acquisition strategy be rescinded. Are we in agreement, Executive? Okay, thank you. That's unanimous. Okay, item 10, appointment of Director of Surrey Heath Borough Council, or SHBC Camberley Limited. Okay, that was an additional paper which followed. Okay, Tim, can I ask you just to go through that, please?
Yes, Chairman. I think the report is fairly straightforward. Karen Whelan, who, as you know, has now resigned as Chief Executive of the Council, was the Director of Surrey Heath Borough Council, Camberley Limited. And we do need to appoint, the Council does need to appoint a Director of Camberley Town Centre Limited. And yeah, so the recommendation is that is as per the report. If there's any further questions on there, Simon Little was the author of this report, so maybe he can answer any further questions that you might have.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Councillor Galliford?
It was just about point 3, authority be delegated to the monitoring officer to appoint new directors in consultation with the leader of the council. I'm wondering whether that authority should be broadened slightly and include someone else in making that decision.
Which one are you talking about? Item 3 point.
Under recommendations, under recommendation, the executive is advised to resolve that. There's point 3, authority be delegated to the monitoring officer. It's the box at the very top.
Yes, I see that. No, small 3. Yeah, authority be delegated to the monitoring officer to appoint new directors in consultation with the leader of the council.
I'm just wondering, is that a broad enough representation of people making that decision?
Sure, thank you. Hang on a sec. The leader. We're doing it through the executive today for this one. No? Okay. Mr. Payne will just give you an answer.
Sorry, just to confirm, Councillor Galliford, as you'll be aware, under most circumstances, when delegated authority happens, it's normally to an officer in consultation with a portfolio holder. On this occasion, the proposal is that it's to one officer, being the monitoring officer, so Gavin Ramsahal, in consultation with the leader, and it's just to speed up the nature of any future changes to the directorship should they occur. Obviously, we've had to wait for this time, or could have taken it under urgent action. So ordinarily, it would just be one officer, being the monitoring officer, in consultation with the leader on this occasion. So if there's a need to have an additional officer or portfolio holder, then that's for the executive to consider, but it wouldn't necessarily be more than just one officer in consultation with the relevant portfolio holder, on this occasion being the leader.
Okay. Simon, if you could come in just on a couple of things, it might just give some clarity. Obviously, dividends are a thing that's directors' bonuses, all this kind of thing, all comes out when you start thinking about shareholders and directors. Is there any, has there ever been, or will there ever be any kind of payments or bonuses or dividends, etc., associated with this position?
The short answer is no, there won't be. As it's a JPUT, and they're unit holders rather than dividends. And we've also, from last year, we've bought the whole of it within the council's accounts. It's all covered within our own accounts. So as a short answer, no.
Okay. And the JPUT, as I understand it, I don't know if it's Jersey law, UK law, whatever, but there has to be 2 shareholders, which is why Surrey Heath Borough Council owns, I think it's right in the paper, 99.99%, and SHBC Camberley Limited owns 0.01%. Is that why? What's the reasoning behind that? Am I correct?
Yes, that's Jersey law. That it has to be has to be separation there. But as you can see, it's 0.01%, which is under the limited company. But the limited company there is to provide that limited risk.
Okay, Councillor Malvaginam.
A question for Simon Little, and for clarity. I thought my understanding of JPUT per se is now redundant, because the assets are actually has been moved, or was being planned to be moved into Surrey Heath Borough Council. This is what I was told when I met up with the property board. Has that been done, or are we still trying to move it because JPUT, in my opinion, should be struck off. It should never be around forever, because I believe there was an issue on stamp duty or the clearance. I did advise that the officers seek HMRC clearance to transfer the assets without any taxation, so JPUT can be quietly put to death.
The answer is both of those. It is within the council's balance sheet now, which is because we have complete control, and that was part of the issue that we had with the accounts last year. However, the JPUT is still a legal entity until we actually dismantle that, and we're getting advice at the moment on the best way to do that.
Right, and I'm just sorry to remind everyone that we're still in part one of the meeting, and the JPUT, as you say, Councillor Malvaginam, is under review. Simon Little is waiting for professional advice on the best way of handling the JPUT, but you know from our meeting where we've discussed this, that it would be our preference for moving forward in a way that probably doesn't include having the JPUT anymore. But I think that's something that we're going to have to bring back at a later date. It would be something that I'd like the working group to be able to look at as soon as Simon has received his professional advice. Okay, but I just cut you off there, Councillor Malvaginam.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to reiterate something which I told the property division and to the previous CFO. We have to have, this is just a recommendation, it's an exec meeting, so I'm an observer here. It's a recommendation that you actually seek HMRC advice on the move, because that is absolutely essential to protect the council. And also, we do not want the JPUT sitting there. That's a fact of life, because that has become an embarrassment to the council. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Chair.
Well, I could go to Simon, but I can't believe that he's going to answer anything other than he will take the appropriate advice from everyone that's required. Okay. And I understand your point of view that the JPUT is a difficult mechanism, and that's why we're reviewing it. Okay. So we are asked to resolve that Karen Whelan be removed as Director of SHBC Camberley Limited following a resignation from the Council's employment. The Acting Chief Exec, Tim Passion, be appointed as Director of SHBC Camberley. I'm going to say I've heard the discussion, I heard your points, Councillor Galliford, but I'm going to stick with the authority be delegated to the Monitoring Officer to appoint new directors in consultation with the Leader of the Council. This is specifically about should we reach the point where Mr. Passion is retiring and we have a new chief exec, it would be the new chief exec's position to become that director if it's required. So I think it's very, very limited in that scheme. And finally, the scheme of delegation of functions to officer at Part 3, Section B of the Constitution, be updated to include the delegated authority. Are we in agreement, members of the executive? Okay, yep, okay, thank you. Okay, we now move to item 11, exclusion of the press and public. All right, thank you, Eddie. Okay, thanks to everyone who joined us. Okay, all right. The executive is advised to resolve that under Regulation 4 of the Local Authorities Executive Arrangements, Meetings and Access to Information England Regulations 2012, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the ground that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in the paragraphs of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act as set out below, 12, 13, 14, 15.